Hello. I don't think anybody's actually there yet. Sorry for running late. I had a little problem with my computer and the password, so things are moving a little slow. 3 minutes late, but we're getting there. Let's see. Yep, up to 20. Hello, everybody. As mentioned, sorry for being late. Things were a little problematic getting everything going. As a reminder, for those of you who've never done this before, the way to ask a question is the Google Sheet down at the bottom. I'm going to be looking at all of them and answering from there. Just to warn you, there are many, many questions. So just so you're aware of all of them. Already have 33. Last one was from Ethan Jackson saying, "Hi, Doc." Hey, buddy. Juliana, thank you for asking me if I had a good Father's Day. That's a good point. Happy Father's Day to all of your fathers. It's a big day. You're sharing it with me and them. They're a little bit more important than me. So that's what we got going for you. Just as it's very brief, just a nice little hello to my fans over in the Peterson household who, no joke, have me up on the big screen right there. That's this guy. So that happened. Yeah, let's start answering some questions. First off, how are the tests set up? The test is set up in, for the Regents, it's 50 multiple choice questions and a thematic essay. The AP is set up 35 multiple choice questions and a DBQ essay. Just so you know, there's an hour and a half for both exams. So you want to make sure you get through everything. Regents, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. 50 questions, each of them worth a point and a half, so 75 points for the multiple choice, 25 points for the multiple for the 25 points for the essay, and then for AP it's 2 points per multiple choice question and 30 points for the essay. Okay, so I already had the question, what's the essay going to be on? Well, it's going to be on something from this year, so you don't have to worry about that. Yes, I'd take that picture. So it's time to get going. Megan asks, why did trade increase after the Crusades? And what is the structure of a thematic essay? Well, let's do the thematic essay structure first, because I feel like that's something that's going to be a little bit more important. So for a Regents essay, what you have to do, you have to have an introduction in which you define the theme, give us a brief historical context, and then answer the question in a thesis statement. That thesis statement can be, must address all parts of the task, so that's the bullet, and just tell us what you're going to write about. It does not have to be in depth, it just has to be clear. You know how in middle school you had that box that was the historical context? That box that you see on our essays is not the historical context, so don't use that. It's just a waste of space, don't do it. Inside each body paragraph, you should answer the bullets, whether or not it's, if it's like a choose 2 nations and for each do this, then the body paragraph should be on the 2 nations and answer the bullets. That's it. Okay, so let's answer Megan's question. Why did trade increase after the Crusades? So as a reminder, the Crusades were a series of holy wars between the there's fireworks outside my apartment. Nice. Crusades were a series of holy wars over Jerusalem between Christians of Western Europe and the Byzantine Empire and the Muslims who controlled Jerusalem. We'll go with the end right now. the end, which the Muslims retained control of Jerusalem, but it led to an increase of trade because Western Europe had been in the Dark Ages. And remember, when they were in the Dark Ages, there was robbery and just terrible times. So they didn't. Western Europe didn't get out much. Literally, they didn't get out much. They didn't trade because if they did, they were killed. They didn't really have goods to trade anyway. But now, once they start traveling to the Holy Lands, so it's like, no, that's gonna be this way for you guys. They start traveling to the Holy Lands. Trade networks get set up because the Muslims were able to retain control of the Greek and Roman knowledge that Western Europe had lost. They were still trading with Asia and China, so that kind of worked out pretty well. Okay, is pre-AP the same as regular social studies? No. Regular social studies, Regents, pre-AP is different. How many questions? Answer that one. How many answers? How many questions and documents are there for the pre-AP? All AP DBQs have 7 documents. Fireworks. It was my, yes, somebody's birthday was yesterday and she wants a shout out. We'll see if you get one by the end. Will studying for the study guide really help, or is it just to refresh your memory of all the topics that we learned this year? No, it's a good way to study. It works. Okay. Me asks, can you go over the outline of a DBQ? Okay, I guess we could do that for the AP. This is AP DBQ. As a reminder, in your introduction, you're supposed to give a historical context where you say where, that's the AP region, not like Asia or Africa. You have to tell us the AP region, the time period, who is involved. And then on top of that, you need to then give us the thesis. That's where you answer the question. You have to tell us the different answers to the thesis, to the question. You can't just go like positive or negative or social or political. You got to be more complicated than that. And then in your body paragraphs, you have to then explain, you have to use the documents to answer the question. Remember, you're not just explaining the documents, you have to prove your argument. So whatever it was you wrote about in your thesis, you got to prove it. And then when you cite the documents, you have to source at least 3. You want to do 4 documents. Sourcing means you say why is it, you explain about the document, like the author of the document, the historical circumstances surrounding the document, the intended audience, purpose, or the point of view, and say why that matters to prove your argument or how it impacts your argument. And then if you do that and just explain everything, you're going to be fine. Okay, if you're regular social studies class, is there Regents or not? Yes, it is. Oh, is it a Regents? Like, no, this is not a state test tomorrow. For the recent AP, you should try to do a conclusion. If you don't do one, it's not going to be killer. Jackie, what are we supposed to do to have a good context for the DBQ? Okay, so still on the DBQ context, just explain about what's going on at that time period, and just give a little bit more detail about the general goings on for the people, the place, and just be a little bit more specific than just saying they were trading. Who were they trading with? What were they trading? Things like that. Okay, Jack has a guess about the essay. Can you talk about the Incas, the Mayas, and Inca, Aztec, and Maya? Okay, this is a Regents question from Alexandria. Can you talk about the Incas, Aztecs, and Mayas? Yes, I can. The Incas, Aztecs, and Mayas were the Native American civilizations from they were the civilizations from the Americas. The Mayas, actually, that's on both tests, maybe. They're applicable for both tests. The Maya were classical civilizations, so they happened at the same time as Rome and the Han. They had a very extensive trade network. They were located in Guatemala. They had advances in math and science, so they were the ones that had the long calendar. That was a very, very specific calendar, solar calendar that was within a couple hours of the actual solar year. So that was pretty good. They invented the concept of zero, much like the Indian civilizations of the Gupta and Gupta. The Gupta did that one. So they were pretty cool. They also had a base 20 math system, which no one will actually understand. So don't worry about that. The Inca and the Aztec were later on. They were more post-classical. These were the Native American civilizations that were conquered by the Spanish. The Inca were in Peru. They did terrace farming. They had a very extensive road network. The Aztec were in Mexico. Their capital city, Tenochtitlan, was on a lake. It had the chinampas, which are the floating gardens. They did human sacrifice because they believed it was important for their gods. So, like, be glad today there would have been no human sacrifices because it's so bright. So that would have worked out pretty well. Okay, next question. We have a study guide. Yeah, you do have a study guide, Ethan. It was the review sheets. Feudalism. Lucas is asking me about feudalism. I can do that. Feudalism in Europe. So just as a reminder, feudalism in general is a system of mutual obligations where there's a landowner, like a lord, who owns land. And then there's peasants who need food, so they go work on that land for the lord. In exchange for the work, they also get protection from invaders. So the feudalism serves as both a political and a social system. In Europe, the lords hired knights to protect them. Knights became vassals to the lord. A vassal is someone who owes allegiance and military service to the lord. The peasants were called serfs, and they could not leave the land. European feudalism was in reaction to the fall of the Western Roman Empire, when things were pretty terrible and they could not. People just couldn't go out, because if they did, they would be like attacked by robbers or Vikings or Germanic tribes. So they needed to just kind of like hide in towns, not in towns, in manors behind walls. Very similar to European feudalism is actually Japanese feudalism. They have a similar thing where the landowners were called daimyo. Then there was the samurai who lived under the code of Bushido, whereas the knights lived under the code of chivalry, and or peasants below them in there. Can you review the dynasties and the major accomplishments of each? I'm going to hold off on that just because I feel like that's going to come up again, and I don't want to repeat myself 17 times. Don't worry, Kelly, I'm going to answer that one. What are the AP regions? The AP regions in the Americas, you got North, Meso, and South America. Mesoamerica includes Middle America and South America. Europe, the Mediterranean Basin, North Africa, East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa. Southwest Asia, aka the Middle East, Southern Asia, that would be India, Southeast Asia, Eastern Asia, Northern Asia. How should we manage our time so we finish without rushing? Great question, Juliana. If you're a Regents kid, you can split it up 50-50. So finish the questions and then start your essay. So like 45 minutes, 45 minutes. AP kids, if it's 35 questions, you want to get that done in 35 minutes so you have the remaining time for the essay. You want to have about 55 minutes for the essay, AP kids, but if you can get more than that, that's good. How can you study for the thematic essay? Because I'm studying a big review packet, but I don't know what to do because I feel like I won't know anything to write. Okay, that's a big question. How to study for the thematic essay is just to know the topics, and then you can figure out what to write, because it's just about explaining. That's really what an essay is. You pick two topics, whatever, you pick your answers, and then you just write down everything you know about it and explain how it answers the question. So you're going to be fine. Explain the Protestant Reformation. Spelt that wrong. Oops. Okay. Protestant Reformation This later on starts in 1517 with a man named Martin Luther. Martin Luther was a monk, and he had issue. He was a Catholic monk. He had issues with the Catholic Church because he studied and taught the Bible, so he knew the Bible really well, and he considered the Bible to be the foundation of all Christian knowledge. Um, and as I said, he was a little angry at the Catholic Church, and in particular, there was a practice of indulgences, which was an indulgence is a way to get out of sin, and the Catholic Church at that time was selling indulgences to fund St. Peter's Basilica, which is the really fancy church in the Vatican. So he didn't think that was cool, which kind of makes sense. Buy something to get out of sin, but okay. But he had so many issues, he actually wrote down his list. It was called the 95 Theses. So his 95 problems with the Catholic Church, and he posted them on the wall of the um, his church in Wittenberg, Germany. People were started reading and were, wow, that's crazy. And then they, Mrs. Whitten sent her first question in. I have an answer to that, but I can't say because it's political. So anyway, he posts it on the wall. People read it like, wow, check that out. And somebody takes it down, brings it to the local printing press, who makes copies. It's spread all over Europe, and people start a religious revolution. What happens is they stop following the Pope. They start looking at, this is what Luther believes, the Pope isn't an authority on the church. The only real, not a real authority in Christianity, the only real authority in Christianity is the Bible. Obviously, it's very different than what the church was teaching, the Catholic Church was teaching. So that starts this big revolution. So you get brand new forms of Christianity called Protestants. So you actually see a bunch of the Protestant churches in Massapequa, like your Anglicans, your Episcopalians, your Baptists, your Anabaptists, your Presbyterians. I think I said them already. There's a whole bunch. Methodists, Lutherans. How do you forget Lutherans? And they all have slightly different versions of how to follow Christianity. None of them follow the Pope. The Catholics respond to this with a lot more education, thanks to the Jesuits, who were led by St. Ignatius of Loyola. He started the Jesuit order, who go around and start essentially explaining to everyone why they're right and why people should stay Catholic. They have the Catholic Reformation and the Inquisition, where they, let's just say anybody who disagrees with the church, they burn at the stake. And they have the Council of Trent, which deals with the where they would rather, where they set up new doctrine to respond. So one, they say both the church and the Bible are good ways to be Catholic. You still have to follow the sacraments. Indulgences are okay, but maybe we shouldn't have sold them. Okay. Mrs. Whitten's new question. Would you rather fight one horse-sized Martin Luther or 100 duck-sized Martin Luthers? I'm pretty sure I could take Martin Luther any size because I'm Dr. Kreidman. For the pre-AP final, is it necessary to heavily have knowledge pertaining to the Ghana, Mali, and Mansa Musa? Heavily have knowledge? I don't know what that one means, Brianna. It's just important to remember that Ghana, Mali, and Songhai were the West African gold kingdoms. They had a lot of gold. They traded with the rest of the world through, there's a couple names for it. The gold salt trade, the trans-Saharan trade, and what was the other one? Anyway, those are the two big ones. Through that trade, Islam comes from North Africa to West Africa. particularly in the state of Mali. Mansa Musa, who was their leader, convinces the rest of his kingdom to adopt Islam, and he went on the most epic Hajj of all time, where he was giving out gold left and right to everybody, so everybody loved him. When he had such a good experience, he made his capital city Timbuktu a trading center and a site of Islamic knowledge and scholarship. Um, so the Islamic scholar Ibn Battuta visited and was like, "Wow, these people really know their Islam," but he didn't like how free and uncovered other women were. What's the difference between Upper and Lower Egypt? Don't worry about it. I shouldn't say that. Actually, I'll tell you. Upper Egypt is actually the highest part of Egypt. It's literally the taller part, evolutionary, elevationary, whatever. And that's actually in the south of Egypt. Lower Egypt is at the north of Egypt, and it's the lower part elevation. You need to know about Aryan migrations. If so, what is that? Yeah, Aryan migrations. For everybody, Aryans were they were a pastoral people who we don't know why, but they started a mass migration like 15 or 1900. I think it was roughly 1900. Um, oh, sorry, um, 1900 BCE. They came up with a new version of new version. I'm sorry. Reading text messages is not a good idea for me. I'm going to turn off my phone so that Mrs. Whitten can't distract me anymore. Um, they did a mass migration about 1900 BCE in which they spread their culture and their religion all over Europe, specifically Southeastern Europe, like Greece, into Southwest Asia, and most importantly into India. That's where the Aryans come in and they conquer the what's left of the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro civilizations, and they bring over their religion based on the Vedas, which would then become Hinduism. Can you talk about the Gupta and the Maurya empires? Great transition. The Gupta and the Maurya are classical civilizations in India. The Maurya came first. They were founded by Chandragupta Maurya, who used war elephants, which are just awesome to conquer. And then conquer north. Both empires started in Pataliputra, which is in northern India. Northern India is going to be the starting point because there was a lot of trade along the Silk Roads that went there, and as a result, that part was wealthier. So obviously their army is going to be better. So they went there and they conquered both of them conquered from there and established trading empires that were really rich and very well governed. The Gupta Empire was first led by Chandragupta Maurya, and it's most known for his grandson Ashoka, who converted to Buddhism after killing like 300,000 people from Kalinga. Felt really guilty about it. He converted to Buddhism and was a very nice, kind, benevolent ruler. He also established roads across India with rest stops. He had the Pillars of Ashoka, which were like a law code. I'm sorry. And then, yes, the Gupta Empire later on was established not by Chandragupta Maurya, but by a man named Chandra Space Gupta, just because that was a golden age. That's when India starts having like the Bollywood style dancing with a lot of big dancing. It's very dramatic. There's the invention of zero. They make medical advances like vaccines. And no, I have no idea how you make a vaccine back then. They have two big things in astronomy, like they figure out that the Earth is round. So yeah, they're pretty cool too. Can you go over the post-classical ages? Big question. We'll come back to it. What is the general gist of the Dark Ages? Okay, I'll do that one. It's from Chris. The Dark Ages they mostly focus on Europe, specifically Western Europe after the fall of Rome. After the fall of Rome, there's no government, there's no military to protect people. So are they going to trade anymore? No. Where are they going to live? They can't live in cities anymore because how are they going to get their foods? Um, how are they going to get their food? It's just going to be a problem. So people leave after a whole bunch of them die. They leave and they end up on manors, which is not fun either. So that's when you get manorialism and feudalism. What's going to be important during this time period for the people? What's going to be the only source of salvation? The only connection they have to the past, and that's the Catholic Church. So the church provides hope because if you live a good life, even if you're a good Catholic or a good Christian, you know where you can end up? Heaven. And at that point, heaven was the only thing they had going for them because things were dirty, disgusting, there was disease, there were attacks. It wasn't fun. What ends up ending the Dark Ages? The Crusades reestablish trade with the rest of the world, so that even though they had lost Greek and Roman knowledge, otherwise known as classical knowledge, during the Dark Ages, it's reintroduced thanks to the Muslims and Byzantines during the Crusades. They also start trading, as we said. So that works out pretty well. Kara asks about the AP kids. What do they need to know about the gunpowder empires? The Ottoman Empire was the one that defeated the Byzantines. They were considered themselves the heirs of both Rome and the caliphs. They were Sunni. They didn't get along with their neighbors, the Safavid, who were Shia. And then there was the Mughals, which is just fun to say, Mughal. They were in India. They established a trading empire in India based on the Indian Ocean Trade Network. Sadly, there's more to know about them, but that's all you guys need to know. Are there more questions on the second half of the year than the first? That's from Brian, and the answer is yes. Gabby is asking about the Renaissance. Great question, Gabby, excuse me. What are we up to? How many questions, by the way? Wow. Hey, Caitlin O'Brien, you were question number 100. Sadly, I'm only at question 64. The Renaissance, this is part of the post-classical age. The Renaissance was the rebirth of Western Europe after the Crusades, when trade resumes. Particularly northern Italian city-states were doing really well. So what do people who have a lot of money spend it on? Art and making themselves look fancy. So that's what happened in the Renaissance. They start getting all smart. They start making advances in math and science. You get the Ninja Turtles, who are really authors, like painters like Leonardo da Vinci, who painted The Last Supper. Don't forget the Last Supper joke. And the Mona Lisa. Michelangelo, who was an incredible sculptor and painter, he did the Sistine Chapel. And it was just a good time where they start questioning a little bit more thanks to the idea of humanism. That was the philosophy where people focus more on classical knowledge and questioning what they knew before. Sam asks, what do we need to know about Africa? Sahara Desert was a natural barrier that prevented a lot of trade and cultural diffusion between northern and southern Africa. Don't forget the Bantu. That was the group that migrated across Africa, spreading their culture and language. That's how we track them. That's about it for now. How many points is the essay? I already answered that one, Isabella. AP it's 30, Regents it's 25. What was the difference between feudalism and manorialism? That's from Kayla. Manorialism in Europe was the manors. Essentially, it was the land that people owned on. It was what lords controlled. Their lord's land in feudalism, that's a manor. Can you go over the Persian, Peloponnesian, and Punic Wars? That's from Colleen. Sure. So we're Persian and Peloponnesian are in Greek. Short version on the Persian Wars, that's between the Greek city-states and Persia. Greek city-states won. it started the Athenian Golden Age. Um, Mrs. Whitten wants me to play Beyonce. Um, yeah, so to help start the Athenian Golden Age, the Peloponnesian War, after the Athenian Golden Age, when like everybody was really angry at Athens for taking their money, it started a series of wars between Athens and its allies and Sparta and its allies. Sparta won, but it ruined um, Greece in that everybody was weakened, which allowed a city state to the north of them called Macedonia to conquer them and unite them, um, and then later on go off and conquer a huge empire. You might know that person as Alexander the Great. The Punic Wars, that was what it makes Rome an empire because they conquer Carthage, which is in North Africa. They got parts of North Africa and Spain. So congratulations to Rome. Already answered what is feudalism. You're welcome, Lucas. What is included in the conclusion of a thematic essay? It's a Regents question. Same thing that's in the introduction, just backwards. Birthday girl. Can you go over how to write an essay? I did that one already. Lobie Horn and Liam Craig. Do we have to remember any years for this? This is from Kelly Cole. 476 CE, that's the year that Rome fell. 1453, that's the year the Byzantine Empire and Constantinople fell. 3500 BCE, that was roughly the start of civilization. 10,000 or 10 to 12,000 years ago, that's when the Ice Ages ended. Are we going to be giving topics to choose from for the thematic essay like we sort of did for the midterm? Yes, Juliana. How many multiple choice questions on the pre-AP? 35. Please listen. What will be the format of the pre-AP multiple choice questions? Hopefully not Regents questions. Multiple choice? I don't know what you mean there. Or most okay. Oh, are they mostly documented or are they more simplistic? They're both. Would you consider this final difficult? I did really well. I feel like I'm going to do really well tomorrow. It's almost like I know the questions beforehand. I don't know how that is. I think you guys are going to do well though, as long as you study and you're listening and you're paying attention to this. What were the major achievements of the Han Dynasty? The Han Dynasty was the classical age civilization in China. They helped really increase the Silk Roads. They made a series of innovations like the compass, paper. Oh, Mrs. Wooden actually is being helpful now. She wants me to go over Confucianism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. That's next, Mrs. Wooden. They did a lot of trade. Actually, that helps us with Confucianism. Great job, Mrs. Wooden. Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism were three philosophies created by the Chinese during the Warring States period to help end the chaos of the Warring States period. As you might recall, China was reunited and the Warring States period ended during the Qin dynasty by their leader Shi Huangdi or Shi Huangdi, which obviously is spelled S-H-I space H-U-A-N-G-D-I. And he used legalism, which was the harsh one, where you have to, where essentially it set a series of laws for people to follow, and if you didn't follow them, you were harshly punished. So that you and everybody else would then know what the laws were and be so afraid to break them that you would just do what you're supposed to. Then there was Confucianism that was used by the Han Dynasty, which came in and replaced the Qin Dynasty. Confucianism essentially believed that there were 5 relationships, and that if everyone knew their place in society, if they were a superior or an inferior, and then just superiors looked out for and guided the inferiors, and the inferiors listened and learned from the superior, everything would be good. So there was a lot more education involved in Confucianism. Like, for example, they set up the they set up the civil service system. So whenever you hear Confucianism, think civil service. Whenever you hear civil service, think Confucianism. Civil service is the test that people have to take to get a government job. It was based on Confucianism, so that's why it worked out pretty well. Okay, what is the Reformation and Enlightenment? I already did Reformation. Enlightenment, super important for this test. You should know everything about it. You have to know the different types of religions. That's yes. So I think you mean different types of Protestant religions or Christian. Could you only give me Christian religions there? So let's just go over a general basics of Christianity. Actually, I'm sorry. Before we do that, Mr. Peterson's sending in a question. What role did humanism play in the Renaissance? Humanism, as you might recall, is a philosophy that came about right at the beginning, essentially right after Crusades, where people realized that church wasn't doing the church wasn't the source of all salvation and knowledge. So people started to look to themselves. They start questioning things and start coming up with more ideas on their own that combine with classical knowledge, so Greek and Roman. So that was pretty cool. Getting back to this whole types of Christianity. So at the beginning, there was only Christianity. Everybody followed Jesus. But after he died, remember in Rome, Christianity was not accepted. It was a challenge to the Romans. So what they did was, what the Romans did was they would persecute. That's where you get the martyrs and the Christians being thrown into the Colosseum to be eaten by lions and wolves and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So Christians had to take it underground. When they did that, they weren't talking as much to other people, because if they did, there was a chance that somebody would turn them in. So Christians in different places started to practice different ways. Over time, the hierarchy developed so that in the 5 major cities, there were leaders of Christianity. So even though there were now like 5 ways of practicing Christianity, every now and then they would get together and have a council. And one of those leaders was the Pope. That's the guy in Rome. The others were called patriarch. And in the first major split of Christianity in 1054, I believe, 1054. Yeah, we're going to go with 1054. I think I might be a little wrong on that, but whatever. In 1054, the Western Europe Catholics split from the Eastern European Byzantine Empire and the Eastern Orthodox. There were a bunch of issues. The main one is follow the Pope, yes or no. Catholics said yes. Byzantines said no. Things like should priests have beards? Who gets to pick the beards? Who gets to pick the priests and the bishops? Should it be the Byzantine emperor or a religious official like the Pope? Roman Empire. Roman Catholics said it should be the Pope. Obviously, the Byzantine Empire and the Eastern Orthodox said it should be the Eastern Orthodox. So there was a split. Later on, 1517, that's when you get the next split in Christianity between, that split is called the Great Schism. I forgot about that, the Great Schism. The next split's the Protestant Reformation, which we already talked about. Does PAP need to memorize dates? 476, 1453, the ones I mentioned before, that'll be fun. Colleen asks, what is an aristocracy and a bureaucracy? Aristocracy is a type of government led by just the noble landowners. So like the really wealthy, rich people, essentially. A bureaucracy is a type of government in which you have trained professionals make decisions. So for example, most governments today are some kind of split. Like you're supposed to have trained educational professionals making educational decisions like your education. So you know who's a bureaucrat? This guy. And his red head, which is weird because that used to be a lot redder too. Fun fact, there was sunscreen all here. and I was underneath a umbrella the entire day, and this still happened. Hopefully, I'm just warm and it's not sunburn, but that would be embarrassing. Expected, but still a little embarrassing. Can you go over the Renaissance? I did that one already. 9R does not have to know Africa, right? Um, Mansa Musa, it's always good to know. West African city-states. I don't remember Bantu's on there. What was the Indian Ocean Trade Network? Great question, Sam. Great question. By the way, we're up to question 88, and there's currently 124. Indian Ocean Trade Network took place, obviously, in the Indian Ocean. As you might recall from the Indian Ocean, or when we studied India at the beginning of the year, India had a lot of monsoons, and didn't have a lot of monsoons. It dealt with the monsoons, which are seasonal winds. During one season, they would blow into India from the Indian Ocean, and then in the next, I think that was during the winter, they would blow in. Oh, sorry, during the summer, they would blow in, and they would take the ocean air, and it would be that's when it's super humid, rains a lot. I feel like I'm doing this wrong. Anyway, and then the other season would blow away. So if you think about it, if you got winds blowing this way and then winds blowing that way, that means that you could actually ride the winds and it'll push you its propulsion. So the Malay sailors, Malay were sailors from Southeast Asia, the islands over there. They learned how to ride the ocean, ride these waves. That's one. Two, you're going to need like a compass, which is going to help because now it'll help with direction. You're going to need a boat big enough to do that, to sail it. There was something called the lateen sail, which is a triangular sail. That was either invented by the Malay or the Arabs, which is kind of arguable. And those two, those inventions now you can trade along this Indian Ocean Trade Network and get places. So that's important for many reasons because this trade network, because it's on boats and connects India, Southeast Asia, which had spice islands, Africa, which had gold and some other resources, and to Southwest Asia, which is like the Muslims and everything there, and then later on China. It carries a lot of goods. So it's, as I said in my class, what would you rather, if you were to own a car company, would you rather own Ford or Ferrari? Silk roads are Ferrari, and the Indian Ocean Network is Ford. Ford makes a whole lot more cars, sells a lot more cars, and makes a lot more money. It's not luxury goods like the Silk Road. So the Indian Ocean does just like common everyday goods. So they have make a lot of money. Through that, a lot of things spread. Initially, Hinduism and Buddhism spread to Southeast Asia. Later on, Islam spreads. Islam serves as a way to unite the different people because everyone who's Islam has to speak Arabic. So Southwest Asia, East Africa, Southeast Asia, all of these places become Muslim just so that they can speak to each other. Jack, you do not need to worry about a conclusion. Remember, that's the AP thing. Regents kids, you need to do that one. Speronis asked a very important question. Are we going to need it to know Kreidmanity for tomorrow? Kreidmanity is about life. You need to know it for your life, to make your life better. Can I write this essay in pencil? I'd prefer not. If you don't have anything else, you can. Sam asks if I can wish her favorite sibling, Gibby, a happy birthday. Maybe? You go over a timeline of Rome and Byzantium. Timeline. So Rome, as you might recall, was started roughly 607, I think, BCE. When the city-state was formed there was a combination of Etruscans, Latins, and Greeks. The Latins provided the language and the culture, Greeks provided trade and some knowledge. The Etruscans were metal workers and engineers. Um, because they were on the other side of Greece from Persia, they were able to grow gradually and establish a trading network, trading empire. Um, the Punic Wars were. What are the Punic Wars? I don't remember off the top of my head. Tempted to say like 250 to 176. I don't know why that's in my head. That's when they become an empire. Later on in the 60s, or actually, anyway, 70s BCE. That's when you get the Gracchi brothers, who were trying to deal with. Who cares? Honestly, 476 CE. That's when Rome falls. 28 BCE. That's when the Roman Empire begins with Augustus Caesar taking over, and that's what starts the Pax Romana. How specific time period you want in the essay have to be? It can be general. Thanks, Lucas. What map should we study for the final? I'm not sure. The AP region map, if you're an AP student, that's a good one to know. Brian just goes Sunni versus Shia. That's what am I supposed to pick? The Sunni, so the Sunni and the Shia are the two major groups in Islam. Was formed after the death of Ali, and they were trying to figure out who's going to be caliph, who's going to be the major ruler. By the way, according to this, I only have 3 viewers right now. It's amazing. I wonder how many I really have. Those 3 are probably like Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Whitten, and then I don't even know. Kids from last year. Oh, my parents maybe. Like my parents could find this. Anyway, getting back to this, the Sunni and the Shia, the two major, they split Islam. The Sunni are the ones that control. They believe they're more. How do I put this? Anyway, they're the ones that lead. They believe that the community should decide who should become the leader, and they set up their own government. The Shia are the minority. They eventually lead other places. Both of them have slightly different versions of how to practice. And that's kind of all you need to know right now. Please review the Mongols. I don't know if anybody from last year is watching. There's the shirt. Thank you for bringing that up, Catherine Dramer. So the Mongols were a pastoral people from the Eastern Eurasian steppes. They were very warlike. They were very fierce. They were very tough. A lot like, dare I say, Mr. Peterson and Mr. O'Reilly, just fierce and tough and mean. And they drank the blood of horses, much like Mr. Peterson and Mr. O'Reilly. Happy Father's Day, gentlemen. Happy Father's Day. And from there, they eventually were united by a man named Temujin, who took on the title Genghis Khan, which means universal leader. And they then went on a streak of just like conquest. They established the largest land empire in history. They defeated and united China and established the yuan. Administrators to China. They took Chinese advances like silk and other technologies all the way the other way. They were not, if anyone stood up to them and tried to fight them, they were very cruel and vicious and destroyed and murdered everybody. But if they didn't, if kind of allowed the Mongols to rule them and pay taxes and all that stuff, the Mongols were very generous and didn't force anybody to like convert or do anything like that. So the Mongols actually converted. The Mongols who were living in Southwest Asia, which is called the Ilkhanate, they actually converted to Islam. I already answered what the Ottoman Empire was. That was question 100. Why were the Jews enslaved? Great question there, Alexandria. Short version, Judaism is always different than the people around them. At the beginning, they were monotheistic in a polytheistic world. So like the Babylonians couldn't handle that. The Egyptians couldn't handle that. Later on, the Romans couldn't handle that. So the Jews were always mistreated because of that. Later on, when Christianity is developed, because the Jews didn't follow Jesus, that's what made them different. So unfortunately, as you know, in this world, over time, over history, one of the sad themes is that people mistreat those different than them, and as we say, not cool, not cool at all. How did Zheng He contribute to the prosperity of China under the Ming Dynasty? If you've never heard of the Ming Dynasty, don't worry about this. The Ming Dynasty was the dynasty that took over after the Mongols and the Yuan Dynasty fell. He helped by exploring the Indian Ocean Trade Network and introducing different peoples to China so that for trade. Is there a difference between social studies and math? Yeah, there is. Please play Beyonce. No. The beach in the background is where I want to be right now. I don't blame you. Actually, I took that Jones Beach sunrise, January 29th, 2016, something like that. Do AP kids need to know about the Phoenicians? Everybody needs to know about the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians are awesome. The Phoenicians actually established the alphabet that we use. Yeah, they were traders, and they were dealing with like pictorial writing. Like think Chinese. Would you want to write Chinese all the time? No, I wouldn't either, because it's hard. It's a lot of different characters. So what the Phoenicians did, they established a written alphabet where the letters stand, the pictures, if you think about it, stand for sounds. It's a lot easier to spell. There aren't that many. There's not that many. There's 26 of them. Thank you, the Phoenicians. The DBQ graded on a 7-point AP scale like the ones we used in class. It'll be very similar to the way we graded in class. Who is Ibn Battuta and Marco Polo? Great question, Alexandria. Ibn Battuta was a Muslim scholar who explored the Muslim world. He went from place to place studying how Islam was practiced in those cultures. Like he went to East Africa, he went to West Africa, he was in the Middle East, he went to India. Marco Polo was an Italian explorer and merchant who did his thing during actually the Pax Mongolica, which is the Mongol Golden Age. So he actually hung out with Kublai Khan, who was Genghis Khan's grandson, one of them, and he became like a ambassador. So when he came back, he told his stories to somebody, and they wrote a book. So they're very similar, where they essentially explain different cultures to different people. Ibn Battuta and Marco Polo. Do we need to know any certain dates? I've already answered that like 40 times. Tips for time management on this test for pre-AP. Just kind of keep track of the time. That's the most important thing. If you're not sure, don't just spend a million times. Just circle it and come back to it. Pre-Columbia civilization. We did that one already. Let's say we did that one. I don't know if you already know answer this, but can you go over the hierarchy of the New Worlds? I think you're talking about the encomienda system. And short version on the encomienda system, that was when, and this is regions, when the Spanish make it to the New World, so like South America, they start enslaving people. They did all of this so that they could benefit. And you don't need to know the different social classes other than just knowing that the Native Americans and the African slaves were treated very, very poorly, and the Spanish were treated very, very well. Wow, people are obsessed with asking the date question. What is the topic of the pre-AP essay / DBQ? Well, it's on something. Maybe I think we studied it this year. Do we need to know about the Olmec and the Chavan? Yes, AP people, you need to know about the Olmec and the Chavan. They're awesome. The Olmec and the Chavan were the first river civilizations of the Americas. The Olmecs were the ones with the salt heads of their kings. The Chavan were the only ones that actually fished. The only civilization I will ever allow you to say that they fished for food. They were independent city-states like the Greeks. They used quipu. Both of them, both the Chavan and the Olmec, grew maize. That's corn. What is the Enlightenment? So important. What's the difference between the Qin, the Han, the Song, the Tang, the Shang? Wow. Gabby, I'm glad I'm saving your life. I am a doctor. Yes, the difference between the Qin, really? I already did the Qin and the Han. So the Shang dynasty, that's the first dynasty, if you will, the Xia XIA. That's the mythical dynasty where they solved the problems of the Wang He, the devastating floods. The Shang dynasty, it was also mythical because they didn't have written records of it. And then the Zhou dynasty, or the Shang dynasty existed. Shang dynasty existed. It was the Zhou. The Zhou dynasty were the first like real dynasty in China, and yeah, they were the ones that came up with the mandate of heaven and the dynastic cycle, and that's when following them you get the Warring States period and the Qin and the Han. Okay, can you tell us the topic of our essay or no? No. Got a big request to explain how exploration is a turning point from an R. Whidden at msd23.org. Exploration is a turning point because, well, first, if you think about it, it's the Native American population. This is for regions, by the way. The Native American population was decimated by European and such as Afro-Eurasian diseases like smallpox and malaria. So like 99% of the Native American population disappeared. It was it's a turning point for Africa because Africans are sent to the New World to be slaves for the Europeans, which stagnates life in Africa so that, well, things don't get better while it gets better in many other parts of the world. It's a turning point for Europe because they get resources and trade and they become the dominant civilization of the world. What were the 5 relationships in Confucianism? That's from Megan. The 5 relationships, father, son, older brother, younger brother, mother to son, messing up, friend to friend. I'm messing it up. Father to son, older brother, younger brother, mother to son, friend to friend. I'm missing one. Just remember the superiors and the inferiors. You don't need to know exactly all of them. Irish is fun with all the sunburn, am I right? You know what I'm talking about, Klein. You know it. It is. I mean, I'm hoping that's, as I said, I'm hoping this isn't sunburn. It doesn't hurt like a sunburn. Like usually if I sunburn, I go like this. It's like you saw that. It stays there. It's not staying there. Yeah. Can you go over a timeline of China? I kind of did that already. All the Castle Learning beneficial, should we only do a few? If you do any of the Castle Learnings that were sent to you, that'll help. The more you do, the more you practice, so I can't say no to that. Were the Romans Jewish or polytheistic before Christianity was approved? The Romans were polytheistic. Jews were living inside the Roman Empire, but they were obviously not polytheistic. You know what? Who takes part in the Indian Ocean Trade Network? It's good to know East Africa, Southwest Asia. It's like the Muslims. So the East Africa, Muslims, Indians, the Malay, or sorry, by the way, I don't know how far over this is. 'Cause I'm reading different things. I saw. Yeah. Anyway, um, yeah, the Chinese. What is Shunming and Joe? I did that one. Woohoo. Who are the Mayans? I did that one, Antonio, but I'll answer it again. Um, the Mayans were the classical civilization in the Americas. They they developed a very advanced calendar called the Long Calendar, which was very accurate to the solar year. They developed the concept of zero, so that makes them very cool. Do we need to know about the Phoenician Wars? Um, Phoenician Wars? I don't know what the Phoenician Wars are, so I'm going to say no. What's your opinion on Tom Brady considering retirement? This season, next season? That's from RJ. Well, I consider Tom Brady's career to be very successful. Good for him. I don't care because he's not playing in the World Cup. The only football that matters. But not for USA this year. Thankfully, next year, 2019 World Cup, USA women. Look forward to bringing back my number 15 Megan Rapinoe jersey, maybe updating it a little bit. Do you know what the Regents thematic essays on will be on? If so, what is it on? I do know what it is on. I'm not going to tell you. Can you talk about the Tang and Song dynasties? Yes, I can, Nicholas. I'm going to call you Nick. The Tang and Song dynasties were after the Han dynasty fell in 220 CE. We're back in China, by the way. China was disunited. They were reunited in 587, 589 by the Sui, S-U-I, because S-U-I obviously is going to be pronounced Sui, and their leader, I don't remember the leader's name. The Song dynasty, the Sui dynasty. The Sui dynasty reestablishes a government. They start working on the Grand Canal and rebuilding the Great Wall of China. But they're overthrown in 618 by Tang Tai Song, who establishes the Tang dynasty, Tang, which is like a golden age. This is when Buddhism starts entering China. Also, when they start reestablishing Confucianism and the civil service exam, it goes big in the Song dynasty, where they create Neo-Confucianism, which is just more Confucianism, and they start doubling down on being Chinese. That's when the tribute system is created, where they want to essentially make other peoples more Chinese. Because remember, the Chinese dynasties at this time were very ethnocentric because they believed that they were the middle kingdom and everything revolved around them. But they were surprisingly okay with people adopting Chinese dress, food, culture, and then that would make them Chinese. Oh, they have to speak Chinese and read, write Chinese. So the Tang and Song dynasties are considered to be golden ages of trade and advances like the water clock, gunpowder, paper money was Han, but they use it a lot more. The compass, that might have been Han. I'm not really sure on that one. Yeah, so good deal for them. Can you go over the Persian War? I thought I did that one. I don't know. What are some of the main things we should study for tomorrow? I'm like having a makeup and you're gonna be fine there, kid. This is for Mackenzie. I'm having main concepts you should study. You listen to this. You take the what you would call it, the castle learning, you're gonna be fine. Okay? Just because you just gotta study, you just gotta relax. You're gonna do fine tomorrow, I promise. What do we need to know about the Jews? Everything, Jack. Uh, Judaism was the first monotheistic religion. It was started by a man named Abraham. He had a covenant with a god named Yahweh. The first covenant, later enshrined in the first commandment, which said that if Yahweh would give Abraham and all of the other followers of Abraham land that would be very plentiful, and protection as long as Abraham and the other followers worship only Yahweh. Um, sorry. So that's the covenant. That's an agreement between man and God. Um, so they get to Palestine, which is the promised land. And some of them are like, wow, this is a desert. It's not so cool. Why are we here? And they leave and they end up in excuse me, Egypt. And that was called the Exodus. They're eventually freed after a couple hundred years by Moses, who leads them out of slavery. He has his own covenant, the Ten Commandments, which are like the Jewish legal code. So that makes them similar to Hammurabi's code, 12 tables, Sharia law. Well, Sharia law was written down like that. Pillars of Ashoka. Okay. What else? Babylonian captivity. Jews are captured by Babylonians. Because remember, as we said before, the Jews are always different. That's kind of like in terms of their relationships with other people, the Jews, unfortunately, because they're always different than the people around them, they were mistreated. Uh, yeah. Eventually leading to the diaspora in Roman times when, because they were essentially trying to become independent, the Romans like, we can't handle this, and they just dispersed them all over the Roman Empire. Okay, do we need to know specific dates? 476 CE, 3500 BCE, 8 to 12,000 years ago. Those are the ones you need to. Who are the Mughals? The Mughals, Mughals, that's AP topic. They were one of the gunpowder empires. They were a Muslim empire that controlled India, which means they were Muslims controlling a Hindu country. They were big on trade and, believe it or not, religious tolerance. Somebody just asked me a quick summary of everything throughout the year in regions. Cultural diffusion. That was quick. What difference do we need to know about religion? Differences? Tyler, that's a tough one. Who's monotheistic? Who's polytheistic? Founder is a good one. What else? Yeah, just who's monotheistic? Who's polytheistic? What's their holy book? That's good. How do I? Okay. What were the effects of the Byzantine Empire on Russia's economy? Great question, Queenan. Byzantine Empire and Russia had a trading relationship. More specifically, the Kievan Rus people. They traded along the Dnieper River, and as a result, the prince in charge of Kievan Rus was trying to get a religion to kind of control his people. And to do that, he used Eastern Orthodox because he knew he would be able to then trade with the Byzantines. He also liked the idea of Caesaropapism, where he would be in charge of the church, not like the Pope. So that was one thing. They used, like the buildings look Byzantine. They used a Byzantine style dress. So fun stuff like that. Your computer keeps cutting out. Mine does? That's not good. Well, I wonder what's going on there. Got full bars here. So let's hope that it's not me. Um, let me, oh, well, I'm sorry. Timbello says he doesn't care about soccer, but he knows that the Germans lost today. Thoughts? Good for Mexico. That's my own thought. Delio Farrell asked me who I think will win the World Cup. No idea. It's one thing the first couple games have showed us. We don't know yet. Nobody's really looked that good. Um, so that's that. Zach Aid, what up, buddy? Hope you're doing well. Brendan Aid, hello, sir. I don't actually remember where I left off. So I'm just gonna go to the new questions. We're starting brand new. Um, go to I'm gonna go to Speronis, who just asked me who the Kevin Roos are. So by the way, yeah, if you have a question I haven't asked, you can now send it in again, or haven't answered, send it in again, and because I've just cut out like 40 questions. Kievan Rus, that was the first culture in Russia. That's the one I just talked about. Ashoka, that was from Brianna. Um, Ashoka is the emperor who led the Gupta Empire. He was the third emperor of the Mauryan Empire. He converted to Buddhism, so he was a very kind and benevolent leader. He established roads to help trade. He had a law code called the Pillars of Ashoka. Do we have to know about Zoroastrianism? I wish, JJ Vogt. I wished. Birthday shout out, please. So nice. What do regular social studies classes need to know? Social studies? I love social studies. I'm glad you love social studies so much, Lucas. Is Paleolithic and Neolithic going to be on this? Yes, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Paleolithic and Neolithic will be on this test. They're really easy. Paleolithic, that's when people were hunter-gatherers. You might see it written as hunter-foragers. That just means gatherers, but somebody decided they wanted to sound smart. As a reminder, they did this. People were hunter-gatherers like all the way at the beginning. That was 99% of human history. This is how we spread because we were looking for food. As populations grew, people needed to spread out more and more and more. We started in Africa, as you might recall, in East Africa more specifically. As we spread, we adapted to different climates and different foods. We're the only species to ever do that. So go us. We adapted. Like somehow this is an adaptation. Yeah. So we were hunter-gatherers. As another reminder, work was split up. Everybody had to work. But in terms of gender, men did hunting and women did the gathering, which got more food. Women doing the gathering. So women provided more food. So in that time period, things were much more equal than they are today. Let's just say that there was no need for a Me Too movement back then because things were even and equal. What changed? Farming and the Neolithic Revolution. Neolithic Revolution was the end of the Ice Age. It thawed land out. So now that there could be more there could be more warm land and more plants. So people somehow figured out how to farm independently all over the world at different times. Oldest, we think, is in the Middle East and Mesopotamia. The Fertile Crescent, excuse me. When people start farming, sorry about that, they get more food. And what happens when you get more food? You can have more population because people settle down too. So women start having babies and they're not going out as much. So literally when the first governments are formed, the first laws are made, women are around. And unfortunately, that's the beginning of patriarchy. As farming begins, people start to develop surpluses. which also leads to a higher population. And eventually, the surplus gets big enough that people no longer have to do food collection. They can start doing specialized labor, like merchants or soldiers or government employees, like kings. And that helps lead to civilization later on. What do regular answer? Structure or pre-PBQ? I'll go over that one more time. In your introduction, you should have both a thesis and your context. So it's like when, where, what's going on, that kind of stuff. The thesis should answer. You also going to need the AP region, the time period. Your thesis should answer the question. Don't be simple and say social, political, positive, negative. You gotta sound smart. In your body paragraphs, you have to cite every single document that's in total. You don't have to do it in each paragraph. Just in the essay, you have to cite every document. You have to have sourcing for 4 of them. Just make sure you sound smart and you're answering the question. You're not just writing about the document. Chris asks, what was the caste system? Great question, Chris. Whoop, got a lot more questions now. The caste system was the social class network in India. It used Hinduism to support it. It was not directly a part of Hinduism. The way you entered one of these castes was by birth. You could not leave, so there was no social mobility. It determined your job, who you can marry, everything. The top were called the Brahmins, Brahmins. They were the priests. Then you get the Kshatriya, which were the warriors and kings. The Vaisya are next because they were the merchants. The Sudras are the servants, and then all the way at the bottom, they're technically not even in the caste system, are the untouchables. For the 9R essay, this is from Brian. Is it a specific unit or a broad subject like the midterm? It's a broad subject. Jen asks, can you go over the Umayyad and the Abbasid? Sure. The Umayyad Caliphate was the first empire the first Muslim empire. They greatly expanded the empire. They established a trading network, and it was controlled by the Arabs. As they got more wealthy, the people they conquered were like, you're not really following Islam as closely as we like. So they were overthrown and they were replaced by the Abbasid. The Abbasid were Persian, and they also established a big trading network. That's the Golden Age. So you might recall their capital is Baghdad, and they had the House of Wisdom. Sorry, my back's starting to get sore. What were the causes of the Roman Empire? Great question there, Brian Boylan 1. There were a lot of them, but in general, there was social conflict because the patricians were super duper wealthy and had all sorts of power and responsibility, all sorts of power and wealth, while the plebeians and the slaves did not. So that was one. There was social conflict, economic disparity, like we were just talking about. There were political problems because sorry, losing a little bit. Political problems in that there was very little stability with the who was emperor. The emperors were assassinated and just wasn't working out. So the government wasn't working properly. They were being invaded by the Germanic tribes. There was disease. The food, their soil was not as fertile anymore. And then finally, other thing, they were divided in 306, I believe. Diocletian divided the empire and established 2 parts to make it easier to be governed. Unfortunately, all the wealth and trade was in the east, centered in Constantinople, whereas in the west, centered on Rome, it just wasn't as good anymore. So finally what happened was after the empire was divided, the Germanic tribes got through the borders and just devastated the Western Empire. and so it fell in 476 CE. Can you put a sample DBQ on haiku? Eden, that's a great question. I can't do that tonight. It's too late, buddy. I'm sorry. Is the age of exploration and the explorers involved important for tomorrow's test? For the regions, it's important in that AP, it's not. The regions, it's important in that you can talk about the Columbian Exchange and its effects on Africa, Europe, and North and South America. Who are the Calvinists? Great question there, Mackenzie. Calvinists were a Protestant church. They believed in predestination, predetermination, which was God already knows who will not be saved and who's going to heaven and who's not. So they're very harsh. What time will this end, Caparelli? I'm going until I'm tired. Tired, but I'm holding out. So I got some more time. Would you explain the difference beliefs between Hinduism and Buddhism? How haven't we done Hinduism and Buddhism? Great question there, Jackson McLeod. Better question. How are your feelings about Unai Emery? As I say with every coaching change, I give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm always scared. I would have much preferred to get Jurgen Klopp 2 years ago, because I think he would have done it. But sadly, no, he went to Liverpool because Arsene held on too long. Getting back to your better question, or your other question, Hinduism, Buddhism, they both believe in reincarnation, which is rebirth after one dies. So, like, think of my body. In Christianity and most Western cultures, when a person dies, it's the body that goes to heaven. Like when you get to heaven, your body is there. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it's not the body. The body is like a container. The soul is the important part. The soul goes on. It's not how you look or how you sound. And you're reincarnated into another body. It doesn't matter if it's male or female. It's based on your karma and your dharma. Your dharma is your religious roles and responsibilities, essentially how you're supposed to act, what you're supposed to do. If you're doing your dharma, you get karma. Think of it like the sum total of all your good and bad deeds. If you have good karma, you're going to be reincarnated into a good life next time. So for Hinduism, that would mean you go higher up on the caste system. For Buddhism, if you have good karma, you're reincarnated into someone who's closer to achieving their end goal, which is nirvana. The end goal of Hinduism is moksha. Yeah. Holy books of Hinduism are the Upanishads and the Vedas. Buddhism, it's the Tripitaka, which is the 3 baskets of wisdom, which will also be my band. Because I'll be in a band. Can you explain the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca? I've done that. Done the Maya like 3 times already. Twice. The Aztecs and the Inca I'll go over. The Aztec and the Inca were Native American civilizations just before the age of exploration. So think like post-classical. The Aztec were in Mexico and like Mexico, Guatemala area, southern Mexico, central Mexico. Anyway, they were in Mexico. They were very warlike because their religion required human sacrifice. They made big advances. They had their capital city was actually on a lake, so they needed more land to farm on. So they invented the chinampas, which was floating gardens, which is pretty cool if you think about it. The Inca lived in Peru, or one of their capitals, one of their big cities was Machu Picchu. So they were up in the mountains. They were up in the mountains. They did a lot of trade. They had terrace farming. So they were pretty cool too. What do regular social studies classes need to know? I don't know how to answer that one, Gabby. I'm sorry. I just it's like a really broad question. Um, the Incas, Mayas, and SX going to be on the final. Uh, they are potentially on the Regents final. The Maya only would potentially be on the AP final. Yeah, don't worry about that. Hanamali and Songhai. I'm gonna answer that one too. But I'll answer that one again just because I like talking about Mali and West African kingdoms. They had a lot of gold. They didn't, and they traded with North African Muslims who had salt. So that's why it was the gold salt trade, also sometimes referred to as the trans-Saharan trade, get across the Saharan desert. It was important because it provided gold to the world, and they also received cultural diffusion through Islam. Um, in particular, Mansa Musa, who was the king of Mali. He, how do I say, he helped convert his kingdom to Islam. One reason why is that Islam has a language for everyone to speak. So that helps trade, obviously. Do we have to know about Japan and Korea? Great question there, Alexandria. Japan and Korea were influenced by China in the period of the Song Dynasty, part of the tribute system. Actually, Korea was even earlier than that with the Tang um, and the Sui. Um, they were taken over by, well, neither one of them were taken over. Um, they they essentially adopted Confucianism. Um, hold on one second. Can you get me a glass of water? Thank you. Um, get parched. As you know, I'm hot. Uh, so Japan and Korea were influenced by China. Korea had to worry more about being invaded, so they went all in. They adopted Confucianism, Buddhism, silk, tea. Unfortunately for their women, they were not the Korean women were not treated as well afterwards. Japan got to pick and choose because they were far away because they were on the other side of the Sea of Japan. So they were they also did silk and tea and the writing style, but they didn't go all in on Confucianism. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Water, very, very important for everybody. Stay hydrated, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, Klein, that's so mean. Adaptations do not have to be good, so that explains why you were bald. Klein, you were so mean. B8 asks, thoughts on the US, Canada, and Mexico hosting the World Cup? I'm thrilled. I'm starting to save $10,000 so that I can get a top row ticket to Giants Stadium for the finals. What is the DBQ on? Stuff. I know you said this already. Can you explain the thematic essay format for each paragraph? Okay. Regents thematic essay paragraph. You're going to want to take one of your answers, one part of your thesis, and explain your answer, give details, support it so that it makes sense, give specific evidence. Oh, B8, nice work on the global regions last year. Very proud of you. Knew you could do it, buddy. What are the AP time periods? Great question, Alexandria. AP time regions, actually both AP and regions should know this. Essentially, early first civilization, like prehistory, period one, that goes to 600 CE. That's Paleolithic, Neolithic, your first civilizations. Then you get the classical time period, the classical age, that goes from 600 to 600 BC to 600 CE. That would be Persia, Greece, Rome, Han, Maya, Gupta, Maurya, and then you get the post-classical. So you get feudalism in Western Europe, Byzantine Empire, Sui Song, um, the Delhi Sultanate, and Islam, the Islamic empires. And then technically after that, 1450 CE, it begins the pre-modern age, but that's not as important for us. Do we need happy tomorrow on the DBQ? Yes, AP kids, you do need to know that. That's for sourcing. Can you go over the social scientists, like anthropologists? Very quickly, social scientists, anthropologists study culture. Um, Historians study written records. Economists study the way goods and products are made and distributed. Um, sorry, I got hungry there for a second. What am I missing? Archaeologists study things in the ground. They dig, like for artifacts, which are man-made, or fossils, which are natural. What unit were the plebeians and patricians a part of? Great question there, birthday girl. They were Rome. The plebeians, as you might recall, were the commoners. Patricians were the wealthy people. What was the Roman Republic and how did it turn into the Roman Empire? Great question, Alexandria. Wow. Actually, how am I doing? 220. I'm only 36 questions behind. The Roman Republic, after the Romans defeated Tarquin the Proud, they decided, you know what, we don't want to have a king anymore. So they created a new type of government called Republic, where they vote for officials to represent them in lawmaking. So that's like when you get the Senate. And each different part of the government, you're the best. Nantuckets, ladies and gentlemen. My girlfriend's the best. The best. Mm. Mm. Okay, let's be honest. The Super Bowl, these are the second best. I don't even remember what I was talking about. Rome. As Rome expanded, um, Rome, every citizen had to serve in the military. Citizens served in the military because that's how they got a government job. Senators had to serve 10 years before they could become eligible for the Senate. Things like that. Over time, as they expanded, they conquered more. There was social inequality and economic inequality where the patricians were getting a lot more land and the plebeians were losing their land. So that those inequalities led to civil wars that were eventually ended after the death of Julius Caesar, who was trying to help, and his grandnephew, a man named Octavian, um, took control of the government, changed his name to Augustus Caesar, and established the empire. What is the Warring States period? That's for Megan. The Warring States period was a time period of chaos and disunity and disharmony in China after the fall of the Zhou dynasty. Can you give a brief overview of what AP will need to know about the Byzantine Empire? Sure, Kayla. The Byzantine Empire, this is for everybody. This doesn't matter if it's AP or Regents. was the eastern half of the Roman Empire. Um, After the western half fell and were destroyed, the eastern half, the Byzantine half, stayed. They stayed united. They flourished because they were still trading. They still had good resources. Later on, they were the ones that had Eastern Orthodox Christianity. They had the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia. Ooh, I can't get that picture right now. The Hagia Sophia Church, which was that ridiculously awesome church. They preserved Greek and Roman knowledge after it was lost in Western Europe. What else? The dude's code. Blanking on his code. The Emperor Justinian's code, which simplified Roman laws. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, so go Byzantines. Sourcing, how to do this. Sure, I'll explain sourcing. So think of it like gossip. Actually, maybe this is a great way to explain it. When your friend starts talking about somebody else and they're like, oh my God, did you hear what, what's the name I'm going to go with? I got nothing. Danny, that's what we're going to go with. Did you hear what Danny did? Danny did this and this and this and this. And you hear that and you know what your friend is saying, but it's important to understand that your friend and Danny didn't get along, and your friend sometimes made things up about Danny. If you were to tell the story to someone else, you would want to explain the source to give clarity about how much to listen to it. So yeah, that's why you want to say who the audience was, because that could be important. Purpose in saying it, point of view, like what their job was, and then say why that's important why saying that is important to understand the meaning of the document. So I hope that helps. There's a question about Machiavelli on one of those Castle Learnings. Is there anything we need to know about him? Yes, Machiavelli was an Italian philosopher who had ideas on government. Short version, rulers should be feared rather than loved, than that the ends justify the means. So whatever the ruler does is fine as long as he attains his goal. What's the difference between reincarnation and enlightenment? That's a Buddhism question. Reincarnation is rebirth. Enlightenment is the ultimate goal of Buddhism. So when you break the cycle of reincarnation. No, you do not need your Chromebooks tomorrow, Kayla. Butland or Leno? Shirley Butland for me. Yes, Tom O'Neill. Shirley Butland. Actually would be okay if Arsenal gets him. What is moksha and nirvana? Great question, Alyssa Shea. Those are the ultimate goals of Hinduism and Buddhism. So moksha for Hinduism, nirvana for Buddhism. Should we know Zoroastrianism? Sadly, no. Can you define enlightenment? How many times have I answered this? Enlightenment's so important for tomorrow. Age of exploration was with Columbus and discovering the Americas, right? Correct, JC. Isabella, what philosophy view was it when the Great Wall of China was first built? I guess you're thinking about legalism and Qin Shi Huangdi, who was the leader of the Qin dynasty. Which dynasty originally? Oh, we just answered that one. Difference between Shia, Sufi, and Sunnis. We did that one. The Sunni were the first They believed that the community of all Muslims should decide who should be caliph. The Shia believed it should be someone who descended from Ali. The Sufi were kind of like the mystics who just believed in a connection with Allah. You go over Taoism. Great question there, Mr. Bartolo. Taoism is one of the philosophies that was used to try to end the warring states period. It believed in following nature and learning about nature to kind of solve problems. Don't try to control people, and so you don't need governments or laws. Just kind of live in small communities where people are working together. When will math and science grades be out? I don't know if you noticed, this is a review for the social studies final. So, Katie O'Brien wants to know what the Ottoman Empire is. Okay, there, birthday girl. Only because yesterday was your birthday. The Ottoman Empire was an empire of a Muslim empire that conquered Constantinople in 1453. They consider themselves the successors to the Roman Empire because they conquered Constantinople, they conquered Byzantines. Byzantines considered themselves Roman. They controlled Mecca, so they considered themselves the caliphs. And they actually ended in World War I. So go the Ottomans. They were Sunni too, so they hated the Shia. The Shia were the Safavids next door. Africa's religion, I think you're talking about animism. That's the religion where there are spirits in nature and animals. Do you know if the 10th grade teachers do? Okay. Yes, Brian, I think they do. Do we need to create a long historical context for the DBQ for pre-AP? I don't know what you mean by long, Brianna. It should definitely not be short. I would say 4 sentences minimum. Beade, I'm glad you're going to at least one US group stage match. I hope to be there too. Can you go over Maurya and Gupta? Sure, I'll do that one more time. The Maurya and Gupta empires in India. Maurya, most famous leader was Ashoka. Ashoka was converted to Buddhism, helped spread Buddhism, had the pillars of Ashoka, which were a legal code, and the roads of Ashoka, which helped create, helped trade throughout India. Gupta Empire were a golden age because they were a trade along the Silk Roads through them. They had huge advances in science and math, like science, like medicine, like they did vaccines. They had, they proved the world was round. They developed zero, actually the numeral system that we use, like the literal 1, 2, 3, all that, invented by the Gupta. Thank you, the Gupta. Do I play football? As long as you mean soccer, I do. Michaela Sakura, I think I told your older sister. Tell her I say hello. Is there any questions on social scientists, or should we just know them? You should just know them, I think. Why did the Tang and Song dynasties begin to decline? They began to decline just because periodically trade declines. There was invasions, so they had trouble holding up with that. Their greatest accomplishments were they reestablished Confucian-based government with the civil service system, the tribute system, so there's a lot more trade, there's a lot of advances and inventions. So thank you, the Tang and the Song. I'm glad you like my couch, Sean. I'm about to get a new one, actually. Maybe you can buy it. Who created the printing press? Great question there, Abigail. I like that question a lot. Video keeps cutting out and going to a blank screen. That's so weird. I don't know what's going on with that, guys. I'm sorry. Just took my phone off Wi-Fi. Hopefully that helps. Who creates the printing press? That was created by a man named Johannes Gutenberg. He was German. It was based on Chinese movable type and block printing, and its effect was it greatly spread education throughout Europe because now books were a lot cheaper to print. So that kind of works out really well. Um, also helps lead to the process of reformation. I bring you chocolate chip you said chelate chip cookies. Will you pass me on the final even if I fail? Birthday girl, maybe if you said chocolate chip, but sadly not anymore. Brandon DeLuso says hi. He wishes now bow tie Wednesdays was the thing in the high school. Dude, you could always wear them, Brandon. Make it happen. Yo, boss, that cookie looked bad. Nice. Thanks, Dorico. Was Augustus the leader during the 200 Years' War? No, but he was the leader at the beginning of the Pax Romana. Who was Charlemagne? Great question, Brian. Charlemagne was the leader of the. He was a Frankish king. He helped start the Holy Roman Empire. He helped bring back education to Western Europe. So that's pretty cool. Do we have to know who Kievan Rus is? Kievan Rus was actually a place in a country. Not really a country. It was the first Russian civilization. So that's what's to know about that. They adopted Orthodox Christianity thanks to Saint Cyril and Methodius, who invented a language for them. Literally invented a written language called Cyrillic. That's pretty cool. Tips for the thematic essay: write more. That's the most important thing, Regents kids. Write more. If we did the castle learnings and did well on those, do you feel we'll do well tomorrow? I think will definitely help. I'm sorry, what dates do we need to remember for the AP again? Signorelli. Oh, more Signorellis. Tell Gabby. At Gabby, I think. She should be out of college by now. Dates for the AP again. 1453 when Constantinople fell, 476 when Rome fell, 3500 BC, start of civilization, 10,000 BC, 8,000 to 12,000 BC, that's the Neolithic Revolution. Well done, Zach Aid, well done. Was Greece's geography difficult for farming, or was seafaring trade just easier? Also, what's the next part of that? They even farm. Okay. Greece's geography was very rocky and mountainous, so it was very difficult for them to farm. It also divided them. That's why they developed city-states. They had to do seafaring trade or they would not survive. Will there be any maps on 9R? Yes. What time is the final tomorrow? It's a morning final, so you got to be there early. What was the Babylonian Empire? Just know Babylonian Empire, that's a code of Hammurabi. Hammurabi's code. Joe Conlin. What's up, buddy? What's up? Does AP need to know about, what does AP need to know about Japan? Same thing Regents does. Sorry, I read the next question. Next question is from Jackson McLeod, who wants me to start an Icelandic thunderclap. And Tom O'Neill and he will do it behind their screens. Don't get me wrong, gentlemen, I would love to do it. We got things to do. Fun fact, 2 guys on my men's team are Icelandic, and there's pictures of them wearing their full kits, and it's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. They were so excited yesterday. I'm looking forward to the next game and hanging out with them for it. What does AP need to know about Japan? Definitely not Iceland. I guess we could say Iceland's, well, it's on the test. I'm not even going to pretend. Japan Japan was isolated from China, so it was difficult to invade because they're islands and they're far away. They got to pick and choose what they wanted from China, so they didn't go full in on Confucianism, and Japanese women were treated better. They did adopt a Chinese style script, that's their written language, tea and silk. So they traded, but they like picked and chose. What was the Hundred Years' War? Hundred Years' War was between England and France over who was going to be French king. Um, Led to a lot of destruction, but helped create a sense of nationalism for the English and the French. Who was the emperor of the Byzantine Empire? Well, the one you need to know is Justinian. The essay and the multiple choice questions, would we have enough time to finish? Presumably, but I can't say yes or no because I don't know you there, Caitlin. Jenna, were you the only teacher that gave out the cast learning? I don't think I got one. I don't know, Jenna. If you email me, see if I can get it to you. What was the impact of the Kievan Rus? What was the impact of the Mongols on the Persians, Kievan Rus, and China? Great question there, Michaela. The Mongols helped spread culture between all of them. They were a little destructive to all three, but in Persia, they adopted Islam. They brought over Chinese innovations to Persia. Kievan Rus, they actually helped to, because people were so angry, they helped lead to the creation of Russia. China, they kind of oppressed the Chinese people with the Yuan dynasty. As you might recall, it was the only foreign controlled dynasty. What were the Samburu people? Well, the Samburu, they're totally on the test tomorrow. You should know everything possible about them. Caitlin asks, is the ocean considered a natural barrier? Obviously, you know how we know that? When was the last time the United States was invaded by another country? Like they had an army invade us. And the answer to that was 1812, literally the War of 1812, the last time we were invaded. Not attacked, obviously, but invaded with another army. Mr. Christian Pulisic, the GOAT. Not yet. Don't give him any heart. Don't give him a chance. What needs to be known about Rome? Oh my God, I only got 3 questions. I'm almost totally caught up. How is that possible? What needs to be known about Rome? They were a republic. They were classical civilization, so they had a lot of they were something later civilizations based themselves on. So like Roman Latin, for example, the language, architecture, later on Christianity. So that's pretty cool. They did long distance trade with the Chinese. How long should we take to do the multiple choice? Regents should do it in about 45 minutes. Hopefully a little less, but 45 minutes. AP, you want to do it in like 30, 35. What topics should I focus on for the essay? I'm not going to tell you that. What do we need to know about Russia? The same thing I've been saying. Okay, birthday girl, I'll go over the age of exploration for you. Age of exploration, remember, short version, Western Europe wants to get access to the Indian Ocean trade network because it's very lucrative, but it's controlled by the Muslims and the Italian city-states. So if you're like Portugal or Spain, you want to get the money and you don't want to have to keep paying Italy for it. Just think of me as Cookie Monster. So my hair used to be red. So anyway, so the Europeans want access to the Indian Ocean trade. So they start looking for other ways to do it. Portuguese establish a trade network around Africa. To do so, they need a lot of inventions, most of which they didn't invent. They got through cultural diffusion from other people, like triangular sail, the astrolabe, the compass. They did come up with their own boat called the Caravel. And then, so they start going around Africa. Spanish, because they listened to a dude named Christopher Columbus go west across the Atlantic Ocean. That's when they discover the Americas and set up colonies. They help wipe out the Native American population thanks to diseases that had never actually made it that had never made it over because of the oceans, which are natural barriers. And then when the Native American population was wiped out because the Spanish were using them as slaves, the Spanish bring over Africans to be slaves. So that affects the Africans. All this while, the Spanish and the other European nations are trying to just gain wealth by taking the natural resources of the Americas and then just making themselves rich. So there are a lot of Paleolithic and Neolithic age. There's not a lot of it. There's a lot of tests about prehistory. That's like the same question. There's not a lot of it. Because we have to define the theme for the intro. Is the theme on the paper? Yeah, it says theme, colon, and then something. And the best part about the theme is we just want your definition for it. It doesn't have to be textbook. So don't waste a lot of time. Regents kids trying to come up with a great definition for the theme. We want it in your own words. So don't try and come up with something textbook. Whoa. What's the difference between a republic and a democracy? Great question, Sam. In a democracy, everybody votes. In a votes for laws and decisions. Like, great example would be Obamacare. Let's just go with that. In a democracy, well, not you because you're not old enough, but me, your parents, all the adults, we all would vote on Obamacare. In a republic, we vote for officials to make decisions for us. So that's why, for example, you guys voted, your officials, your representative is Peter King. That's how it works. What is the Zhou, Sui, and Ming? It's from Alexandria. The Zhou, the ZHOU, they were the first Chinese, first big Chinese dynasty. They created the Mandate of Heaven. The Sui reunited China after the fall of the Han. And the Ming, so important. Kelly Cole, you don't need to bring cookies in tomorrow. You're going to be fine. For the Regents final, is there a thematic essay or SAQs? Thematic essay for the Regents. How does this test compare to the midterm? It covers more years? I think you guys can do it. I really do. What's the main goal of Columbian exchange trade? What was the main goal? I don't know what that question means, Caitlin, other than to make Europeans rich. Chauvin. The Chauvin were the Native American, the first civilization in the Andes in Peru. They were also called the Norte Chico. They were the only civilization out after the hunter-gatherers who fished as a main source of food. Only ones. They were independent city-states, so they traded a lot. They did do a little bit of, they used quipu. Who comes to mind when you hear Blackburn Rovers? Tom O'Neill. There's only one name for that one, and that is Shearer. Yes, that's right. Shearer led them to the championship, I believe, in 1996, where you were born. What were the Italian city-states? Great question there, Caitlin. Italian city-states were like Venice and Genoa and not Sicily, Venice, Genoa, Milan. After the Crusades, they became wealthy. They were the centers of the Renaissance. Are we provided a historical context in pre-AP? Yeah, you wish. What is a hierarchical social structure? Great question, Victoria. A hierarchical social structure would be like the caste system, where there's levels. So you got your Brahmins, your Kshatriyas, your Vaisya, the Sudra, and the Untouchables. What was the Athenian direct democracy? Well, in Athens, as you might recall, citizens got to vote directly on laws and like could propose and then vote on the laws. So it's more complicated than that, but that's all you need to know right now. Centralized versus decentralized governments. Great question there, Jenna. Centralized governments are governments that bring everybody together and there's one leader or one place leading it. So think of it like a king. Decentralized would be like Greece, where there's all independent different city-states. Can you explain theocracy, oligarchy, etc.? Theocracy is a government controlled by religion, so oftentimes the king is a god. Oligarchy, Tom O'Neill, I just saw your answer. Definitely not Matt Prusen. Sorry, Prusen. An oligarchy is a government led by a few people. We already did Republican democracy. Aristocracy, it's a government of wealthy landowners. Do we have to know about the Peloponnesian War? No, Paige, you don't have to know that. Why were people so against Judaism? As I said, Jews were always different, and people were, as we know, people don't do well with differences, unfortunately. If the Joe created the mandate of heaven, what did the Shang do? That's a great question. Oh, oracle bones. They had oracle bones. Oracle bones were the oldest examples of Chinese writing. They also helped do ancestor worship. What is the point breakdown? 35 multiple choice. Point breakdown for AP. 35 multiple choice questions, 2 points each. 1 DBQ essay, 30 points. What are the main points of the post-classical era? In the post-classical era, minus Western Europe, empires get bigger, like Islam and the Mongols and Sui the Tang and the Song, the Mughals, everything gets bigger. It's a lot more trade, so they talk about intensification. What's the difference between Brahma, Brahmin, and the other one? Brahma is the god, the creator. Brahman, Brahman, is the world soul that we're all a part of. This is all in Hinduism, by the way. And Brahmin is the social class. So guys, that's actually my last question. Yeah, I've never done this before. I've never actually got to the end of the questions. I don't know what that means. There's 313 on here. 312, I should say, really. So if you have other questions, this is kind of your last bet, because I've been doing this for 2 hours now, and it's time. How was my day? Thank you, Kelly Cole. My day's gone pretty well. Started off in Pennsylvania with my family. I went to New Jersey to visit my girlfriend's family. So it's all good, minus the redness. Thank you, Aiden, for asking that same question. Compared to the villages, sorry, Jackson, I'm not going to answer that one. Thank you, Brian Boylan. Who's John Calvin? Sorry, reading the next one. John Calvin was a Protestant leader. He developed a religion called Calvinism with predestination or determination, which was, so the idea was that you sin once, you're out of heaven. So it was very strict and not much fun. Birthday shout out. Thanks. It's not my birthday. Fine. Shout out to Juliana Cardello. Yesterday was her birthday. Happy birthday. Can you explain the diaspora? Diaspora to come back to Judaism. The Romans, because they were kind of sick with. Think of it like school. When you have, and it's obviously it's different because it's religious, but when teachers have a bunch of kids who are annoying, they talk all the time and they're disruptive, what do we do to them? We separate them. And that's what the Romans did to the Jews. They separate the Jews all across the Roman Empire. The idea was that because the Jews were rebelling repeatedly. So it's just one more difficulty that the Jews faced in retaining and maintaining Judaism. So if you really want to talk about survivors, and people overcoming, it's always the Jews. Same difficulty as the midterm? I think so. You're welcome, Brian. Strongest empire? Ooh, great question. Depends on what you mean, strongest. Economically, socially, politically. Great question. It's the most important concept we should know before I take the final. Everything comes back to geography, economics, and cultural diffusion. The encomiendas system, that was the labor system in the Americas, brought by the Spanish. It was very racist and ethnocentric. Go over Persia. Persia, the Persian Empire was the example empire for all other empires. They established provinces called, I'm blanking, I'm kind of tired. They established provinces. They were religiously tolerant. They focused on trade. So they were pretty cool. Okay. Something, it's terrible telling you. I didn't watch any of the games today. I didn't have time because I was traveling so much. I'm sorry. I'm really disappointed. I want to watch the Germany-Mexico game. African empire cities are important. Mali. What empires, dynasties were religiously tolerant? Persia definitely was. The Muslim empires were surprisingly religiously tolerant. How was the Islamic Empire formed? Through trade. I'm sorry, first the conquest, then through trade. Yeah, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm losing it. If you have any other questions, I'll try and you can try and email me. But I think we went through everything already. I can't think of anything from all these questions I'm seeing that I missed. So, Intro Bartolo, you're a terrible person. Just want you to know that. Yeah. 5 relationships, that's Confucianism, superior and inferior. That's all you need to know. Know your place. Yes, anyway, I'm done. Tired. I apologize. I will see you guys in the morning in roughly 12 hours. If it makes you feel any better, I will be there approximately 6:15. So good luck tomorrow. I will see you there, and